What an exciting day. The bracket is out. We know finally the wait is over. I can't believe it. Andrew, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling overwhelmed. I feel like last year going into this, we had such a good idea of who the best teams in the country were. There were undefeated teams that had gone through conference tournaments. They hadn't lost all season long. It was like, these are clearly the best teams in the country. And now there's like 15 teams where I'm like, maybe that's the best team in the country. I don't know which one's the best team in the
I
country.
know. I'm having trouble filling out this bracket like every single step of the way. I don't even know. It could really go either way. So we're super excited to get into all this, breaking down the bracket. We're going to talk about the top four seeds. We're going to talk about who might have been left out or maybe deserves to be there. We're going to talk about the best first round matchups, any potential upsets, who has a harder bracket, although I think the whole bracket's hard, so it's going to be tough to determine that. So yeah, we can get straight into it. First of all, we're talking about the women's soccer Division One bracket that was released today, and that is for the 64 team single elimination tournament that will start this week, this Friday, and this is the 43rd edition of the NCAA Division One women's soccer tournament. So yeah, to kick us off, Andrew, who are top four number one seeds?
Well, for the first time in program history, the number one overall seed is the Duke Blue Devils out of the ACC. The ACC, once again, a loaded conference this year, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as we move on. But conference realignment really played a major role in why we don't know who the best team in the country is, because everybody played each other and they kind of beat up on each other. So Florida State, a good example of that, kind of had a rough patch in the middle of the, Duke, rough patch early in the season, but they've been one of the best teams through most of the season, stumbled in the ACC tournament, and that leads us to the other number one seed on that side of the bracket, and that is Florida State. I mentioned them just there, a Freudian slip. Middle of the season, lost back-to-back games to Wake Forest and Virginia Tech. But here they are. When we made a visit to campus, they talked about, hey, it's a rough patch, but the goal is to be playing in December. Not quite December yet, but it's November, and they're one of the top seeds on that left side of the bracket. Maria, please tell us, who are the two number one seeds on the right side of the bracket?
On the right side of the bracket, we've got Southern Cal, USC, whatever you want to call them, out in California. They only had one loss this season, and they had a PK shootout that, against Rutgers, that counts as a tie, so we won't count that as a loss. But yeah, we've got USC, and then we've got Mississippi State, the Bulldogs, who have been unstoppable this season. They've had a great, not only attacking, but defensive line. I think they have one of the lowest scoring averages, goals against average in the nation, top two, I'm pretty sure. And they were undefeated in a tough SEC, and they had losses early on to Wake Forest, and we saw in the SEC championship just this past weekend they had a tough loss to South Carolina. But let's maybe switch gears really quick and talk about all these great tournaments that we saw over the weekend. We saw all these automatic bids, all these different teams winning their conference championship to then get an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. So there's 30 teams that got automatic bids, and then there's 32 that were seeded, and then other two that were added in there to make 64 our total, if my math was correct there.
You are correct.
So did you have any favorite moments from those conference championships?
Yeah, we wrote that in there. It was quite interesting. Obviously, those three number one seeds, only one of them is a conference champ, and that's Florida State. Again, they seem to make that a theme there down in Tallahassee. My favorite moment was probably JMU. JMU's back in the tournament for the second year in a row, and Shay Collins had such an unbelievable year last season. I believe she's a fifth-year senior now for the Dukes. Hasn't quite gone according to plan for her. She was a double-digit goal scorer last year. Only 5 this year, but the 5th one was the biggest of the year. That Sun Belt Championship game winner in the 89th minute near post. Get out of the way. The goalie didn't look like she wanted anything to do with that Shay Collins rocket. So that was my favorite moment. You had a handful written down there. I didn't want to steal them, but those were great as well.
Yeah, no, I got to say JMU, from the Sun Belt, close to my heart. Georgia State unfortunately lost. They went to PKs, and it was, it's always tough to watch them in PKs. But another great moment came out of Big Sky. We had Sacramento State. They are going to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2010, and they won all 3 of their conference tournament games in PKs. Not only did they win them in PKs, but they had their redshirt freshman off the bench keeper come in and make 2 saves in each of those PK shootouts. She made such a clutch save in the last game, ultimately giving them the win. And I mean, just watching that PK shootout and their celebrations at the end, I mean, that's what it's all about.
It's also crazy because the rule changes this year were meant so that we didn't have as many PK situations. But here's Sacramento State. They're like, oh, come on, feed me PKs. They're loving PKs. Not a problem for them.
Yeah, and they've got Southern Cal in their first round, which is going to be a tough match. But let's hope it doesn't go for, SoCal's for their sake. Let's hope it doesn't go to PKs because Sacramento State has proven
they're ready.
That, they can take on anybody in PKs.
Absolutely.
Do you have another one?
No, I think JMU was the number one that I had, and then obviously when you're winning that many PKs and it goes 8 deep, that was pretty insane. There were a handful of other great PK moments throughout the tournaments. Rutgers is one that comes to mind. Florida State earlier against Wake Forest. Great PK moments. But me personally, Maria, I'm a guy that likes the goals to be scored in a run of play. Let's finish it with a golden goal and maybe avoid PKs. But, hey, if you're a Sacramento State fan, you're like, Andrew, shut your mouth, dude. We're ready to keep going to PKs.
That's where they shine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got to say one of the best golden goals was out of East Carolina. It was double overtime, and it sent them to their first ever NCAA tournament, their first conference win in the AAC. And it was the girl who scored it, Annabelle Abbott. It was her first goal of the season, so what a time for her to score that. And then also it was thanks to great performance from the goalkeeper, Maeve English. She made a huge save in the 97th minute, and that was her 30th career shutout, happened to be that game as well. So watch out for East Carolina.
You went Sun Belt. I'm an American Athletic Conference guy, so I got to give some love to ECU. I will say we will get into some of the teams that we might be thinking about that aren't in the field of 64. ECU knocked one of them out right there in the American Athletic Conference Championship game, and that was Memphis. A lot of people very frustrated that Memphis is on the outside looking in, one of those very high RPIs that's somehow not going to get to continue to play soccer this year. So, obviously everybody can't be in the field of 64, but a tip of the cap to the ladies from Memphis there. A great season again. Just unfortunate that they're on the outside looking in. I'm seeing a lot of comments talking about a bunch of games. We're going to get to them. We're going to break down a bunch of games.
Yeah, we will. Definitely. I'm trying to read them really quick. But talking about teams on the outside, there's some teams on the inside for the first time. We talked about East Carolina, also Southern University from the SWAC conference. They're in it for the first time. California Baptist is in it for the first time, and as well as USC Upstate. They play UNC first. That's going to be kind of a cross-state rivalry for sure. And they're the only team to win their regular season and the tournament in that area as well.
I'll tell you what, the committee was not kind to the teams that are going to the tournament for the first time. I guess hang your hat and know that, hey, we can be happy that we made it here. But, boy, those matchups are tough. Like you said, Cal Baptist going to go to UCLA. We'll talk about UCLA in a little bit, but one of the premier defenses in the country. ECU at South Carolina, we saw what they did taking down Mississippi State. They ultimately lost to Texas in that SEC championship game. Mississippi State, we just mentioned them. And then USC Upstate has to go to UNC. The ACC, always tough. And we will mention this. I know a lot of people are in there talking about Utah State. I've seen people comment about Oklahoma State. Part of the, I guess, criteria for seeding does have to do with geography. That is a factor in this. So there are some situations that we'll talk about later where there are teams like maybe Oklahoma State that might be a little bit underseeded because they didn't want to have to send them to the other side of the country for a first-round matchup.
That's right. For the first 2 rounds, they don't want conference teams to play each other. And then also, like you said, they try and choose teams that are geographically close to each other. And so that is a big factor that sometimes it's not as black and white of just, this team's seeded, this team's not. But going back to the seeding, we talked about it when we went over the in-season top 16 reveal. They choose those based off of RPI, strength of schedule, head-to-head competition. And then this year they also made a big point to say they're also focusing on wins and ties with teams who are in the top 25 and top 50 RPI. So that's a little insight as to why the seeds look the way they do. Which brings us, we can go into underdog teams up here next, since we're talking about these teams that might have been not seeded, or if it's their first time in the tournament, they've got kind of a tough route here. So what is one of your underdog teams, Andrew?
I'll tell you my number one underdog team. I think that this part of the bracket kind of scared me, and I wasn't really sure who would have come out of that middle top of the top right quadrant. I really like Princeton. I think Princeton out of the Ivy League is elite defensively. I think that they're going to cause problems for UVA, a great team that didn't make the ACC tournament. On the women's side, it's quite interesting that only 6 teams make that ACC tournament. There were really good teams that were not playing in a conference tournament, like Stanford, like UVA. And I think maybe that layoff might not have been good for UVA. I think Princeton's in a good position to go on a little bit of a run there. They could get Wisconsin in the second round. I'm not going to say that that's a favorable matchup. The Badgers are a very accomplished team out of the Big Ten. But I like Princeton to definitely make some noise in the first round there, taking on a team, UVA, that we haven't seen play in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I've got Kansas. I've been liking them. They won a tough Big 12 tournament with a 1-0 win over TCU. And they're on an 8-game win streak, so they've got the momentum going. And in those 8 games, they've outscored opponents 16-3. They shared it today in the selection show, talking about how impressive these wins have been. And they had an impressive win over Arkansas in the first game of their season. And they're playing St. Louis first, which I think is a very doable match.
The Billikens have not lost since September. 7 straight A-10 championships out there in St. Louis. So, another one where you looked at that matchup and it's like, oh, my goodness. Both of these teams are teams that I really thought going into this could have made a deep NCAA tournament run, and now they're playing each other in the first round. So one of those is going to be quite disappointed and heading home a little bit early.
Yeah, definitely. I have that marked for later to talk about best first-round matchups, potential upsets. That's definitely one that's marked for me. You said 7 straight wins. They're on a 16-game unbeaten streak. There are 6 ties in those unbeaten streak, but they had a loss to Penn State early in the season, and, definitely going to be a good match to watch. Another under the radar team, Andrew?
Another one that you want me to throw out there.
Sure.
Okay, I would say it's not quite under the radar, but it's a team that I think is going to make a run, and a team I really didn't think all year long that I would pick against Mississippi State. I love watching them play soccer. They're tenacious. They're great playing at home in front of their fans. Those fans have set records for attendance. It feels like every single game that they go out there in Starkville. But I'm taking Notre Dame to upset Mississippi State. Their trio of freshmen. They have 3 freshmen that are all double-digit goal scorers. They had tons of talent leave from last year's team that made it pretty solid NCAA tournament run, and I really did not expect much from the Irish heading into this season. And those 3 freshmen, led by Izzy Engel, who's 4th in the nation in goals with 17, that's a team, not necessarily an underdog team, but the 4th seeded Irish, I think they're going to make a run.
Okay. We can talk a little bit about Utah State. We mentioned it earlier. They are one of the one-loss teams that I'm looking out for. They have the 5th highest scoring average with 2.7. They're just behind FSU, so they have a great attacking mentality. What else do we need to know about Utah State?
RPI 17th in the country. I think people have a little bit of a gripe that the Utah State might be a little bit underseeded there at 8. They beat Pepperdine, who's a tournament team, Texas Tech, who's a tournament team, BYU, who's a tournament team, and their lone loss comes to Wyoming, which is a little bit of like a head scratcher. But you look at those 3 wins, and those are 3 very impressive wins against teams that are in the field of 64. I do think Utah State got a little bit underseeded, and that's not an easy matchup that they have there. Where did that go on me there, Maria?
They're playing Washington.
Yeah, Washington's a really good team out of the Big Ten. Another team, I think you look at teams like Washington, you look at teams like Cal. They join new conferences, and maybe they're in the middle of the pack, and last year in that conference, that wouldn't have been good enough to make the field of 64. But now they're in a more loaded conference, and being in the middle of the pack in a competitive conference gets them in. Ioana Papatheodorou for the Washington Huskies. premier goal scorer. Utah State, I feel your pain. I thought that was a little bit underseeded, and I'm going to be honest, they're not going to like me right here. My full bracket predictions will be out tomorrow. I did take Washington over Utah State.
A little spoiler for you there. Yeah, we'll have Andrew's full predictions out tomorrow, predicting every single matchup all the way to the College Cup. Another one-loss team that I've got my eye on, that I'm not just saying this because somebody put it in the comments there, but Western Michigan, they're another one-loss team. They play Michigan State in the first round, which is going to be tough, but they're also the only team on the left side of the bracket with one loss. So that's something that stands out to me immediately. And they've had the best season in their program history, winning the MAC regular season and the conference tournament. So that's a team that's on fire, and it's their first time in the tournament since 2015. So they're kind of here with something to prove and show that they're ready to go.
Jen Blidcock, one of the best goal scorers. She's got 17 for the Broncos. It's been a fun year up there in Western Michigan. The men's team was the last undefeated team in the country. You just said it, the women's team with a program best season. So good to be in the tournament.
Yeah, something's in the water up there at Western Michigan, I guess.
We like it.
Okay, we can move on towards
Maine is another one of those one-loss teams that's in there for the first time. Not the first time, but a tough matchup. One thing that somebody commented underneath the post on our Twitter page that I did like and looked up that was entertaining. Christina Kelly, number 7 for Maine. She's a senior. She must have had some type of facial injury this year. She's rocking the black face mask. Those always are good looks. Makes you look intimidating. So Christina Kelly and the Maine Bears, keep your eye on number 7.
All right. I mean, she'll be hard to miss, I guess. But I remember, right? I think it was in the Euros, Mbappe had like a Spider-Man mask. Like, you can get them customized. So maybe she'll come out with like a team
LeBron
logo
always used to wear it in the NBA, but then they told him he couldn't wear the black one anymore. Now it's going to be the clear one. Not as cool, but hey, Christina Kelly will be wearing the black one. She'll be looking fierce.
Yeah, and then I was just looking at the stats before getting on here. I wanted to just go through a few of them, scoring offense being one of the biggest ones. We've got Arkansas leading the nation. Then you've got Duke and FSU right behind them. So those are some of the best attacking teams, but then also, we mentioned it earlier, some of the best defending teams with the lowest goals against average is UCLA, and then Mississippi State and Georgetown. We haven't talked about Georgetown yet.
So UCLA, Georgetown, and Iowa, 3 of the top 7 goals against average in the country, they're all in the same quadrant. It is absurd how good that defensive quadrant will be. The one thing I will say about that, Georgetown, Fairfield, a crazy good season, 18-2-1. They're an automatic bid. There's a chance they might have gotten an at-large bid. And another thing about them, while Georgetown likes to slow it down and control the pace, Fairfield's up-tempo. They're trying to put up a lot of goals. Another quick note, like you just mentioned, UCLA, the number 1 scoring defense in the country. 16 shutouts for Ryan Campbell. Lily Reel, the number 1 player in the country by some outlets through most of the season. Single season shutouts record in the NCAA all time is 19. That was set by UCLA in the mid-2000s. 3 shutouts for UCLA would tie an all-time single season record. Keep your eyes on that as the Bruins move forward in the postseason.
Yeah, we'll be tracking that. Definitely, if they get enough shutouts, they'll make it to the College Cup.
As I've continued to exchange with Ryan Campbell on Instagram, you literally cannot lose if you don't allow any goals.
That is a great
guy, but that's a fact.
That is a fact, and that is a fact that I hope all goalkeepers, keep at the forefront there. Okay, so road to Cary. We've got the Final Four. We call it the College Cup here. The College Cup's happening in Cary, North Carolina this year. It's kind of like UNC. Well, it's not kind of. UNC is hosting it. They're considered the host with Wake Med, neutral site. That's where the ACC tournament was played. That's where the men's and the women's College Cups are going to be played. So, you've got your first few rounds at schools and at their sites, and then you've got the College Cup in Cary, neutral site. Who's got the easiest, which I don't think anyone has easiest, But who's got a pretty good route
That was
to the College
my
Cup?
first thought when I saw that in there, Maria, was easiest. Boy, there's real no easiest track on here. I did pick two of the teams that I picked to make it to the College Cup. I feel like
Yeah.
that would make the most sense. And that's on the left side. That is both teams out of the ACC. I'm taking Duke, like I said at the top, the number one overall seed for the first time in program history. And then on the bottom part of that bracket, I'm taking Florida State. I don't think either of them are easy. Easy is like a crazy thing to say, obviously. But I think that realistically, like Penn State, TCU, I don't think either of those are the best 4 or the best 5 seed. That's who Florida State would see in the third round. And then obviously it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination to play UNC. They've already beat them twice this year. I'm a big football guy, and they always say in the NFL it's like hard to beat a team 3 times. I do stand by that it is hard to beat a team 3 times. But Florida State's also proven now that they can beat UNC not only at home but also at Cary, and this one would be back in Tallahassee. So my 2 picks there. Easy is definitely, I saw people like saying, I know, I agree. Easy is not the right thing to say. I do think that Florida State will play UNC in that quarterfinal matchup to get to Cary for another run. And then Duke as well. I think easy is not the right word. I do think Texas is really good. I do think Texas Tech is really good, but I think it's the easier option, if you will. Maria, please tell me we might be on the same mindset. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can change the verbiage. Maybe say like the ones we're most confident in, because none of this is easy. Like we said, coming into this, there's no undefeated teams. All the conferences got kind of thrown around a little bit, and there's a bunch of big matchups during the season that already put these teams to the test. So we'll say the most confident route to Cary. I've got Duke as well, but instead of Florida State, I have UNC. Somebody just mentioned it. Can we talk about UNC? And look, UNC's in my opinion, a third team. We saw them against Duke. This is my counter to your, third time's the charm. They played against Duke at home and away and lost to both of them. And then in the third round, they were able to take them out in the ACC tournament. So I don't know, maybe that's something that works for UNC. And I think, with the promise of making it back to Cary, they could very well upset. I don't know if you want to call it upset, but they could very well beat Florida State. Another fact there is they haven't won a title since 2012, I believe. This is a team that boasts, having the most national titles ever. They have they have 22 titles under Coach Anson Dorrance, who this year retired. Yeah. They've gone through the season without him, with interim head coach who's been doing great. And so I think they really do have something to prove here. So I don't think a third matchup with Florida State should mean anything other than maybe an upset for them. You
mentioned the interim head coach, Damon Nahas, first season. I feel like if you make a run to Cary, like we can rip off the interim tag right away, right? If you make a run to the College Cup, you can keep the job for sure. Kate Fossey reminds me a lot of Avery Patterson from last year for the Tar Heels. Just when there is a big moment, you know that she's going to come up with it. Fossey leads the team in scoring. She's been a ton of fun to watch. So, again, I said Florida State. You said UNC. Neither of them are easy. And I do love, I got to say it, the comment section has been nonstop saying it. We're picking UNC. They got USC Upstate. Is that who they play in the first round?
UNC, North Carolina, USC.
And they're in the comments telling us, don't sleep on Upstate. Upstate's got the easiest track. Upstate. So don't sleep on the Spartans, Maria. You might think that UNC has the easiest track, but our comment section is definitely telling you that those Spartans might have a chance.
There you go.
Go Upstate.
I mean, this is a tournament and anything can happen. So definitely we will be keeping our eye on Upstate. So that leaves kind of, I mean, I don't even know if it's worth going into the hardest route because they're all hard routes. I had the hardest route being FSU, North Carolina, that bottom left quadrant, just because that really is such a toss-up. And, with USC Upstate in the mix as well, that just makes it even harder. So what do you think about the hardest, the toughest?
Well, because I had the 2 easiest tracks on the left side, I went the 2 hardest tracks on the right side. I'm going to say Mississippi State because I already told you I think Mississippi State is going to run into a Notre Dame team in that third round there that would be really tough. And guess what? If they beat that Notre Dame team, then they'd run into another team that they've played this year and a really good team in Arkansas. That bracket is crazy. I love that bracket. Arkansas is really good. We know Stanford made a run to the national championship game last year. Notre Dame's pretty good. Mississippi State's pretty good. So to me, that one was the hardest. I think Mississippi State got a tough draw there. Utah State was that 8 seed that we've talked about. They could see them in the second round, and we already said we didn't think they were really an 8 seed. So that's a tough draw for Mississippi State. And then I'd also throw Ohio State into the mix. They were one of the top teams for most of the season in the Big Ten, kind of faded down the stretch. But Kaylin Dudukovic, 17 goals this year for the Buckeyes up top. She's been phenomenal. But you look at who they play. JMU made the tournament last year. They're back again. That's a tough matchup in the first round. They could play Auburn or FIU in the second round. Auburn was one of the teams in the beginning of the season that just couldn't stop scoring goals, and we thought that they could be a team that played in the College Cup. And if they get past those two, then they get Wake Forest. And if they get past Wake Forest, then they have to play USC, the top seed out of the Big Ten. So I think that right side of the bracket is really, really challenging. But again, this year, there's nothing easy. There's nothing easy, Maria.
All challenging.
Yes, very much.
So that brings me, we're talking about Quadrant, so let's just go ahead, and we've kind of said them, but let's clarify what we think are potential quarterfinal matchups. Going back to the left side, I have UCLA versus Duke for that quarterfinal matchup. I think those are two extremely strong teams, a very attacking team in Duke. We've talked about how great they are at scoring. They've scored 53 or 54 goals this season compared to last season where they scored about 15. So they've just had, there's a story within itself, which I'm working on an article currently. But, Duke has had such a comeback season. It's their coach's, Coach Robbie Church. It's his last season as head coach. He's been the coach since 2001. So when you talk about kind of external motivators or really internal motivators to make these external results, Duke has definitely got that going for them, and they have such an attacking mindset, which I think will match up great with UCLA's amazing goalkeeper, Ryan Campbell. Who knows, if she stops the goals, then they can't win. So that's a big rivalry I've got in the top left.
Yeah, that's the same exact matchup that I had. You mentioned Robbie Church. Anybody that's met him in the soccer community knows just a genuine man, a good person that, like you said, it'd be easy to root for him going out on top in his final season. But UCLA will be as tall of a task as anybody. You mentioned how great they've been defensively. But Maggie Graham, Mia Oliaro setting the single-season points record for Duke, Minestrella, Lynch, the list goes on and on what they have as far as attacking firepower goes. So in that quarterfinal matchup, I did pick Duke to move on to the College Cup. In the bottom left, I had the same thing that you had. And we had opposite results picked there. I had Florida State beating UNC for a third time, even though you said that you have them, UNC's already done this, third time's the charm. I do think Taylor Huff's just been absolutely phenomenal. The ACC tournament MVP, I believe career high with 33 points, was just an absolutely outrageous number. And Ron Iwa, 5 ACC championships is a ridiculous thing. One for the thumb, as they used to say about Jordan and Kobe and all those guys that won 5 rings. Brady, that's disappointing, but yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Whatever the result is, we know that if those two teams are in the quarterfinals, that is going to be a phenomenal matchup, a matchup that's happened before, and it's always produced great results. It's always produced extremely entertaining soccer, and that's what we're here for. We're here to be entertained. We're not the ones playing. So either way.
One quick note based on the comment that just came in, just a funny laugh on a behind-the-scenes thing from what we put out from our trip from Florida State. I interviewed Jordan Dudley. Someone commented and said Jordan Dudley's a beast. She was obviously one of the best players last year as a freshman. They won the national championship. She spoke at the White House. That's such an accomplishment. That's going to be the scariest thing you could, speak of the White House. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
She said doing an interview with me was more scary than speaking at the White House, which is this is a high-pressure athlete that lives for those big moments. and doing an interview with little Andrew
I mean,
McDevitt
what does that
was
say
scary.
about you?
Well, no, it should not say anything about me. It should say more about Jordan Dudley and just the humble individual that she is, and just the high quality athlete and person that she is. So it's just a funny note I figured I'd throw in there.
Yeah, that's a good story. I mean, she was just playing in the World Cup for the U20 women's team. She won bronze, so she's got all kinds of hardware
Quite the
internationally, in
pedigree.
college,
Yes.
and who knows where else, in years to come. All right, so moving through the other quadrants in the top right, we talk about how that whole right side of the bracket is gonna be tough. I've got Wake Forest versus Southern California. I don't have a winner yet. I mean, I do because we're gonna do our predictions, but I think that'll be a big toss-up. I think we have people in the comments talking about Ohio State. I think Ohio State Wake Forest will be a great third-round matchup, but I think Wake they've shown that they can show up against top opponents this season, so I have them reaching the quarterfinal.
We have quite the boring bracket thus far. Just straight chalk for the quarterfinals. 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 now. I'm the same way. I have USC Wake Forest, but Wake Forest slaying giants has been the story of the season. They took down number 1 Stanford. They took down number 2 Virginia. They took down the reigning champs Florida State. I think that this is a spot where they're going to continue that trend. Emily Murphy, Emily Colton, Kaya Hanks. Too much offensive firepower. I keep using that term. I got to figure another one in there. But I like the Demon Deacons to get that one done in advance to the College Cup. It's the first time in a handful of years that Wake Forest would be back.
Yep. And moving down to the bottom right, I mean, they're all hard, but I would love to see an SEC rematch between Mississippi State and Arkansas. They played earlier in the season. Mississippi State won 1-0. They had like 13. They had a crazy amount of shots. Arkansas was able to stop most of them except for one. And there was about 4 yellow cards, so it was really feisty, got chippy in there, and that's always, fun for us to watch. So I definitely think if we were to see an SEC rematch in that quarterfinal, that would make great TV.
See, what a bracket there, because an SEC rematch would be entertaining. So would an ACC rematch, and there's a chance that we could see Stanford and Notre Dame. They played earlier this year. I'm an old school guy. I can see you did it all on your screen. I'm definitely an on paper guy. I stared at this bottom right quadrant with a pen in my hand, just shaking for like 5 minutes. I couldn't come up with a pick. But ultimately, I went with Arkansas and Notre Dame facing off in that quarterfinal matchup. Arkansas has never made a College Cup. I think that is accurate. And I think they made a quarterfinals back in 2016. I think that we could have quite the entertaining matchup there with Wake Forest and Arkansas, 2 teams that have never won a national championship going after that. And that could be a ton of fun.
I mean, we might as well just go ahead and go straight into it and then we'll go over first round matchups after we reveal our College Cup predictions. We've basically laid them out, but we can go through them. I've got Wake Forest versus Mississippi State on one semifinal, and then Duke versus UNC in the other semifinal. I'll let you reveal yours before I give my ultimate champion.
I have Duke, Florida State, and then Wake Forest and Arkansas. 1-1, 2-2. One's on the left, two's on the right.
All right. And I have in the final Mississippi State versus Duke. And then I have Duke claiming their first NCAA title in Coach Robbie Church's last season. It's just so I want boring, the storybook. Maria. I want the storybook finish.
I had Duke in the middle too. Chalk from Maria and Andrew, the number 1 overall seed. It would be quite entertaining, but that is exactly what we saw last year. Florida State was the number 1 overall seed, straight to the championship game, and I don't think they gave up a goal until, or did they give up a goal at all in that national championship? I don't think
in the finals. The finals was 5-1, okay. But I mean that's okay.
Yeah, in the waning moments when the game was in hand and the trophy was already being etched with their name on it. Yes.
Yeah. So you've heard it here. Those are our women's soccer College Cup predictions. We'd love to hear yours in the comments. Who do you think is making it to Cary this year? Who's in the semis? Who's in the finals? And who is taking home that trophy? Before we get to Cary, let's go over really quick our first round matchups. They're starting this weekend. What are the ones that you'll be watching that you have circled on your calendar on your bracket?
Man, there were so many of them, Maria. I already told you that I do think Princeton and UVA is going to be a great matchup. I do think Princeton has an opportunity to make a little bit of a run there. Another one that I really like, a team that made a tournament run last year, Georgia. Georgia is a 7 seed this year. I believe they made it to the 3rd round last year, if I'm not mistaken, before losing to Clemson. Colorado is a team that's unranked. I thought Colorado was having a little bit better season than what I saw from Georgia, but maybe that experience that the Bulldogs have last year making an NCAA tournament run is beneficial to them, and they're able to apply that to their game against Colorado. That's one that I'm definitely going to be watching because I thought Colorado might have a chance to be a team that was hosting a game similar to what UGA is doing.
All right, yeah, the other one I have circled is 7 seed Virginia Tech versus Tennessee. Tennessee's kind of had a rocky season. 9-6-4 is their record, but they made it in. And, Virginia Tech has beat FSU 3-2 and Notre Dame. So Virginia Tech is a great team. But then also Tennessee, this is their 4th straight berth into the NCAA tournament. And these two teams have never met in the NCAA tournament. And their all-time record is 1-1-1. So it's pretty equal across the board. Tennessee beat Memphis earlier in the season when they were ranked at number 5. And they tied with South Carolina, who's proven, in the postseason to be great as well. And they lost in overtime to Mississippi State just now in the tournament. So I think Tennessee should not be overlooked. And I definitely think that Virginia Tech, Tennessee is a matchup we haven't seen in a while. So that'll be a great one for the first round.
One of those ones in the middle there where it was like, man, Tennessee, they might be on the bubble, and it was good to see them get in because, like you said, some pretty big wins down the stretch that made them deserving of a spot in the field of 64. I have not mentioned one of my favorite teams to watch all season long, and I do have to shout them out before we get off here because I did see it in the comments. South Carolina has been so much fun. Their program when we were there was nothing but first class. It's great to see them make a run to the SEC championship game. Tough one for them losing to Texas, but Cadbury is one of the best in clutch moments that I've seen this season, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. She's obviously a physical specimen, quite tall and great at using her head in the air, but then she scored from angles where it's like she's almost on the sideline. She scored from there, so shout out to South Carolina. That's a team that I think could be playing a little bit deep into this NCAA tournament. Maria, I do have to say, all year long, you've done a great job at putting together these outlines. Someone in the comments said, you know your stuff. It's always great to have a soccer expert, someone who played the game at the Division I level, to help keep me in check and keep me a little grounded. I like to get real high sometimes.
No, it's always a pleasure, Andrew. You come with like the stats, you come with all the players and the names, and I come with the expertise. So we work out perfectly. But
the yin and the yang.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I think that's all we have for now. We'll be back next week discussing the Men's College Cup, or the men's bracket release that will be next Monday at 1 p.m. But we'll be on around the same time next Monday. So if you care about men's sports, come to that as well. If not, we'll be following women's soccer this whole season just here on NCAA.com, on NCAA social accounts. And, look up Andrew McDevitt's Twitter account and Instagram. He is at all times tweeting, posting updates, anything you need to know. You can look on his story.
3 games a night, Maria. That's the minimum. We got to be watching 3 games a night. It's been a great college soccer season. I'm excited that we get golden goal in the NCAA tournament this year. Maybe a couple less PKs. Sorry, Sacramento State. I know you like your PKs, but it'll be great. I'm really excited for this field of 64, and we'll whittle it all down and crown a national champion at Wake Med Park on December 9th. Maria, you're the best.
You are too. Have a great night. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
See you, soccer fans.